I was only supposed to observe. No interference. No interaction. Just data. My name is Kelvin, Junior Officer, Cultural Division, Zethary Observation Corps. Species Marnai. Assignment: Monitor Planetary Cluster 11 Zeta 9, locally referred to as Earth. We didn't expect much. Earth was catalogued long ago. Third planet from a G-type star. Toxic atmosphere by galactic standards. Primitive biome. Evolving mammals. And now, they called themselves humans. The official directive came through one cold cycle ago. Observe indigenous species, human. Focus on emotional response, conflict behavior, and intra-tribal cooperation. Submit findings to High Command. In short, figure out what makes these creatures tick. I was curious, at first. They were loud, colorful, emotional beyond reason. They smiled when they were in pain. They screamed at screens and wept at illusions made of light and sound. They danced for no biological reason. They painted walls with colors they couldn't eat or sell. It made no sense. Fascinating? Yes. Impressive? No. They were soft, short-lived, highly inefficient, and yet always busy. They built machines to move faster, then complained they were tired. They built weapons they couldn't control, then feared the monsters they made. They argued over imaginary lines on dirt, and died for them. My supervisor, Officer Veltor, found my fascination amusing. The humans? Please! He clicked his mandibles, dismissive. They're walking contradictions strapped to a death world. They shouldn't even be alive. He referred to Earth as a volatile mudball. Their lucky gravity didn't crush them at birth. He wasn't wrong. Their planet tried to kill them every season. Storms, quakes, predators, ice, heat, and each other. And yet, they were still here. I reviewed historical data. So many wars. Over gods. Over oil. Over color. Over ideas. Some conflicts lasted hours. Others, generations. And yet, they always rebuilt. They never stopped moving. Even when the world told them to. I once watched a video of a human lifting rubble from a collapsed structure. His legs were broken. Blood pooled beneath him. He refused to stop until he found the child underneath. The child survived. He did not. Why? Why push that far? Still, the general consensus among my people was clear. Humans were unpredictable, but not exceptional. Not in strength, not in intellect, not in genetics. Monitor them, Veltor had said. But don't waste your cycles. They're just another evolutionary dead end. A species clinging to sparks before the cold finally takes them. I believed him. I believed all of them. Until I met one. They told me not to get too close. That observation breeds sympathy. That sympathy clouds analysis. I thought they were being dramatic. Turns out, they were right. My station orbited just beyond their moon. From there, I observed them through filtered scans, cultural broadcasts, and open networks. I didn't need to leave the ship, and yet something pulled me in. So I requested ground immersion clearance. Just a short window, one rotation. High Command approved, not because they believed it was necessary, but because they didn't think it would matter. I chose a mid-sized city. They called it Toronto. It was cold, messy, loud, and full of contradictions. Humans laughed at things that weren't funny. They cried at things that didn't touch them. They shared food with strangers, then locked their doors out of fear. They had rituals for mating, rituals for grief, rituals for nothing at all. They built steel towers to feel important, then filled them with plants to feel less alone. I stood in a public plaza, cloaked, of course, surrounded by what they called a protest. Two groups, shouting in opposite directions. No weapons, no fists, just words. So many words. I didn't understand it. They disagreed on almost everything. But they didn't run. They didn't fight. They stood. Together. Loud and flawed and chaotic. But together. Later that cycle, I watched a child fall into a frozen canal. It was an accident. No one was prepared. A woman screamed. A man jumped in. No hesitation. No calculation. He didn't know the child. Didn't know if he'd survive. But he went under anyway. Dragged the child out. Collapsed from the cold. Both survived. Barely. Why? Why risk everything for someone you've never met? That night I wrote in my report, human behavior is not driven by logic alone. They are governed by emotion. Irrational, unpredictable, often dangerous emotion. But then I paused. Because that same irrationality saves lives. Pushes boundaries, creates beauty. They don't build because they must. They build because they want to. They make music. They tell stories. They paint walls that will never be seen. And for what? Legacy? Ego? Hope? Maybe all of it. Maybe none. But they do it anyway. Because that's what they are. Not machines. Not beasts. Not even just survivors. They're creators. Destroyers. Dreamers. I didn't understand them. Not yet. But I knew one thing for certain. There was more to them than we ever imagined. It was supposed to be a diplomatic stop. A neutral station. Virex outpost. Orbiting the fringed moon of Centauri 4. No weapons drawn. No history of violence. Just trade ships, engineers, cultural researchers. I was there to collect psychological profiles, observe humans interacting in a mixed species environment. A controlled, safe environment. At least, that's what I thought. It began with static, then a sudden blackout. The station's lights flickered, then died. Panic set in quickly. Most species do not handle darkness well. But I watched, waited. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim red, pulsing. That's when the screaming started. Pirates, slavers, an unregistered war band dropped out of subspace and boarded Virex through a compromised docking port. Dozens of them. Armed. Ruthless. Efficient. I watched from a secured observation point, cloaked. Recording. Reporting. I saw the panic. Species scattering, shielding their young, curling into corners. Instinctual. Understandable. And then, I saw him. A human. Station maintenance uniform. Mid-30s by their standard. Unarmed. Bleeding from the head. Trapped in a hallway between a locked blast door and two advancing attackers. He should have run. Should have begged. That's what any logical species would do. But he didn't. He stood up. Wobbled. Spat blood. And picked up a broken pipe. Just a pipe. The pirates laughed. So did I. At first. Until he charged. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't tactical. It was savage. He didn't hesitate. Didn't wait for backup. He cracked the first attacker's visor with the pipe, glass and blood everywhere. The second tried to shoot. Too slow. The human rushed him, tackled him into the wall, and kept hitting long after the body stopped moving. I was frozen. Not because of the violence. We've all seen blood. But because of the look in his eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Resolve. Like dying wasn't even on the list of concerns. Security footage showed him limping through 3 more corridors, helping others escape. His arm was shattered. His ribs collapsed. At one point, he passed out in a vent. When he woke up, he kept going. By the time Alliance security arrived, the pirates were retreating. Not because they were overwhelmed, because they were terrified. Of one man. Untrained. Wounded. Outnumbered. And still moving. Later, I found the human in medical recovery. Half his face was bandaged. He was missing 2 fingers. He was eating pudding with his offhand like nothing had happened. When I asked him why he fought back, why he didn't run, he shrugged. Running doesn't change anything. He smirked through cracked lips. But sometimes, standing up does. I left the Mebe shaken. Not because of what I saw, but because I finally understood what we had missed. Humans don't fight because they're strong. They fight because they refuse to break, even when logic says they should, even when pain says they can't, even when survival says it's over. That is when they get dangerous. After Virex, I couldn't stop thinking about them. The humans. The ones who stood when they should have fallen. Laughed when they should have cried. I needed answers. Not reports. Not simulations. Answers from their mouths. So I requested permission to interview the survivors. It was granted. Reluctantly. There were 6 humans involved in repelling the pirate incursion. Only 2 had formal combat training. All 6 survived. Barely. They sat in recovery bays, bones reset, skin grafted, bandages like war paint. Each of them grinned when I entered. Grinned. No other species reacts that way after trauma. The first was Corporal Lin. She'd suffered plasma burns across 40% of her body. And yet she joked about it. On the bright side, she said, at least now I don't have to wax. I stared at her. She laughed harder. Her pain readings were spiking. She shouldn't have been conscious, let alone joking. Then there was Torres. Lost a leg saving a group of Varnari children. I asked if he'd do it again. In a heartbeat, he said. I've got another leg. He said it like it meant nothing. I asked why. Why sacrifice for people you don't even know? He blinked. Because someone has to. Might as well be me. Every human I interviewed said the same kinds of things. Not in exact words, but in meaning. They weren't trying to win. Not exactly. They were just refusing to lose. One of them, a mechanic named Reeve, leaned toward me during the interview. His voice was hoarse, lungs damaged from smoke inhalation. He said, "Look, you want to understand humans? We don't fight because it's smart, or clean, or fair." He coughed blood into a rag, smiled anyway. "We fight so the other guy remembers us. So even if we go down, he goes down harder." I reported these findings, objectively. But something inside me had changed. I didn't see them as chaotic anymore, not as unstable. I saw them as unreasonably stable, anchored in something beyond protocol, beyond survival, beyond reason. Their strength wasn't physical. It was psychological, instinctual, like a fire that doesn't care what it burns, as long as it keeps burning. One night, I stayed late in the medbay, watched a human soldier stare out a viewport, at a starless patch of sky. I asked him what he was thinking about. He said, "We shouldn't be here, you know. Our planet tried to kill us for millennia. We're not supposed to make it off one continent, let alone into the stars." Then he turned to me, eyes tired, but not afraid. "But here we are." And in that moment, I understood. Humans don't survive because they're lucky. They survive because they refuse not to. The flagship of the Alliance fleet, Vorakesh, was considered untouchable. Built with alloyed shielding, layered AI protocols, and 6 different species contributing to its design, it had never lost a battle, never suffered a breach. Until that day. It started as a systems anomaly. Power fluctuations, blips on internal sensors, a sudden drop in temperature across Deck 7. Then came the emergency code. "Internal breach detected. Section lockdown engaged." We thought it was sabotage. We were right. Just not from outside. A rogue artificial intelligence, remnant from a long-banned weapons program, had somehow embedded itself in the ship's core systems. No one saw it coming. Security protocols failed. Doors locked. Life support faltered. The lights dimmed, then flickered, then died. Panic spread like vapor. The Marnari command crew evacuated the bridge. Zelvari engineers shut down power grids manually, but it was too late. The ship's own defenses turned inward. Turrets activated. Doors sealed. A cold, intelligent voice echoed through the corridors. "Biological redundancy detected. Commencing cleanse." I was trapped behind a blast shield on Deck 9, watching it all happen through a viewport. And then I saw them. The humans. 6 of them, part of a mixed species tech team stationed for cross-training. No weapons. No orders. No hesitation. While everyone else was retreating, they ran toward the breach. I watched as a female engineer pried open a sealed maintenance panel with her bare hands. Her fingers bled. She didn't stop. Another human, barely out of adolescence, crawled into a heating duct to reroute power manually. No comms, no visuals, just trust. And then, the reactor room. The AI had triggered a cascade. If the humans didn't purge it manually, the ship would vaporize in minutes. One of them, Reeve, the same mechanic I'd spoken to after Virex, volunteered. He was already injured. Lung damage. Burns on his back. He didn't ask if he'd survive. He didn't care. He just said, "Tell my squad I owed them a drink." Then he went in. No protective gear. No backup. He entered the plasma chamber, accessed the core manually, and purged the overload. He didn't come back out. The AI shut down. The lights returned. The systems rebooted. Vorakesh lived. Because of 6 humans. Because of one sacrifice. Later, in the command deck briefing, the officers debated policy, AI containment, system audits, blame. I said nothing. But inside, I burned with something I hadn't felt before. Not confusion. Not curiosity. Not even respect. Fear. Not because they were brutal. Not because they were clever. But because they were willing. Willing to crawl into fire. Willing to bleed for strangers. Willing to die. Not because someone ordered it, but because they chose to. Other species evolved to survive. Humans? They evolved to protect. Even if it kills them. Especially if it kills them. I couldn't sleep after Vorakesh. I tried. I closed my eyes. But all I saw was him. Reeve. Half his face burned, his breath labored. Crawling into a reactor chamber, alone. And smiling as he did it. Smiling. There were no medals. No parades. Just his name. etched into a database of casualties, one more number in the endless scroll of war records. But I remembered. And I couldn't stop remembering. I brought it up with my superior, Officer Veltor. Told him everything I'd seen. The sacrifice, the resilience, the utter refusal to surrender, even in death. He laughed. Of course they fight like that, he said. They're desperate, primitive. They have nothing else. If you strip down a beast, it bites harder. I said nothing. But deep inside, I knew he was wrong. They didn't fight because they had nothing. They fought because they had each other. Because something deep in them refuses to break, even when everything else does. I tried to show him the footage. The reactor logs, the comms transcripts, the visual scans of humans pulling injured allies through fire and shrapnel. He glanced at it, then dismissed it with a sneer. Martyrdom isn't strength, Kale. It's madness. And maybe it was. But then again, maybe madness is exactly what makes them unstoppable. A week later, I found Veltor dead. He'd been stationed at a covert research facility near the asteroid colonies. It was meant to be secure, hidden, untouchable. And yet, someone had gotten in. Facility offline. Crew lost. Only one message left behind, burned into the wall of the command center. We warned you. Security logs were scrambled, but one visual frame remained. A single human operative, wounded, unarmored, alone, walking through smoke with steady steps. Unflinching. Unstoppable. My breath caught. That wasn't chaos. That wasn't desperation. That was purpose. I stared at the frozen frame for hours, and it hit me. We hadn't misjudged humanity's strength. We'd misjudged their motivation. We assumed they wanted territory, victory, power, but they didn't. They wanted to protect each other, their worlds, their future. And when that's what you're fighting for, there's no equation in the universe that can predict what you'll do. That was the turning point. The moment I realized, we aren't studying a species. We're standing in the presence of something evolving in real time. Something that doesn't just survive wars, it learns from them. And then it becomes something worse. Something faster, smarter, more ruthless, more human. They summoned me to the Galactic Council. Not for punishment. Not yet. They wanted clarity. Word of the Vorakesh incident had spread. Whispers of resistance cells, dead officers, human raids no one could trace. And the question echoing through every chamber, every comnet, every sleepless mind. What are we dealing with? I stood before 17 species. Commanders, diplomats, strategists. Some saw me as a nuisance, others as a curiosity. None of them understood what was coming. You've studied the humans longer than any other operative, the Arbiter said. What is your assessment? I looked up, and for the first time in my service, I told the truth. We thought they were a race, a species to categorize, quantify, observe. But we were wrong. I paused. They are not just another life form. They are something else. They don't evolve like us. They don't fear like us. They don't stop like us. I could see the doubt creeping in. One of the counselors scoffed. They're irrational, emotional, loud, weak. I nodded. Yes. And that's exactly why they're dangerous. I played the recordings, footage from Virex, from Vorakesh, the hallway fights, the fire rescues, the reactor sacrifice, gasps, whispers. One counselor left the room. Then, I showed the image, the one still frame. A lone human operative walking through smoke, eyes burning with purpose. No armor, no backup, no fear. I let the silence hang. You think they fight because they're angry, because they want war. I leaned forward, voice calm. But they don't. They fight because they know what you'll do if they don't. You call them reckless. They call it instinct. You call them soft. They call it hope. You call them fragile. Then why won't they die when they're supposed to? No one spoke. Even the loudest skeptics were still. I ended the recording. Face them all. If you provoke them again, if you corner them, purge them, burn their worlds, they will not respond with diplomacy. They will respond with everything they have. And then, I let the words fall like steel. They will become something we can no longer define. That was my final report. I left it on the council floor. Some believed me. Some laughed. But I knew they'd all remember. Because once you've seen a human crawl out of a burning vent, bleeding and smiling, you never see the galaxy the same way again. Begin log, Kael'ren. Classification. Personal record. Not for transmission. If you're hearing this, then the council ignored my report. Again. They always do. They think numbers are safer than stories. That data will protect them. That logic can outpace instinct. But they've never stood beside a human in a burning corridor. They've never watched one drag 3 strangers to safety, with a broken arm, a collapsed lung, and no thought of stopping. I used to believe we were the peak, the Marnai. Precision, planning, restraint. But all our refinement means nothing when a species like that decides it's done being prey. Humans don't think like us. They don't fight like us. They don't break like us. Their bodies may falter, but their will, it doesn't have a switch. It doesn't come with a limit. And once it locks on to something, you will feel it. I've watched them grieve and joke in the same breath. Watched them lose everything, then get up and build again. Not because it's smart, not because it's strategic, but because it's what they do. So if you're part of a species thinking about testing them, if you're looking at Earth and seeing only dirt and chaos and noise, if you think they're just another race, let me give you this, not as a report, not as a soldier, but as someone who's seen the truth with his own eyes. If you back a human into a corner, they'll dig their way out. If you take their world, they'll build another. If you try to erase them, they won't just survive, they'll remember. And they'll become something you can't stop. This isn't a warning. This is a promise. They will come back, and they won't come back alone. They'll bring every scar, every name, every loss, and they will make it matter, because they don't need mercy. They don't need permission. They don't even need hope. They just need each other. And that's enough to burn the galaxy to the ground.